Good afternoon, Suidlanders, and welcome to Suidlanders Week in Review. In fact, if the truth be told, I've missed 2 weeks in review because my internet was cut off. I had a bootleg copy of Starlink and it was shut down, and I have to get some other internet. But it's very difficult because the location in which I live, or to be more precise, the situation of the location is such that they can't provide wireless at all. They came and tested. A very good team of guys came and tested. So I have to get satellite, but there's a bit of cost involved, and we'll work on it again today and see how we go. And it's not easy for me to, for instance, go to a place that has telephone data signal. The nearest is 9 kilometers away on a copy. And if I go to town, it's 19 kilometers away. So it's a very great inconvenience, but we will sort it out. Anyway, now you know why service has not been all that good recently. Oh, and I haven't even mentioned to you how bad the roads are. Shredded so that they had to be thrown away. 5 tires in 2 months with 8 serious punctures in the other tires. The 5 shredded, throw away, get a new one. All terrain, 3,800 Rand a pop. And of course, driving 19 kilometers once or twice a day and then return, that's 76 Ks, is just very, very expensive. Anyway, guys, I would like to be of some help to people who may be bewildered and perplexed by some of the things that are going on in the world, whose explanations don't wash. Some of you will listen to this and say, he's for the Jews. He's a Jew. Some will say he's an anti-Semite. Firstly, let me tell you that if you impute the Jews into the story, you're making a mistake, because there are other groups that I'm about to describe. Two. One of them, everybody knows, is the Christian evangelicals. There's another one that shall go nameless, all of whom are working towards the same goal. And there's a lot of evidence for this. And nothing that I'm about to tell you is my own inference. I haven't figured anything out. Everything is written in black on white. I've just done the research, and it's incontestable. If you were to spend a week with me and go through, I don't know, perhaps in a week, maybe 60 hours of the material, you'd rapidly discover that from their points of view, there's no contesting this. Is this what they're doing? Is this what they believe? These multiple entities? Unquestionably. So hopefully I can help you a little bit. Why is Donald Trump trying to annex Greenland? And there's the Canada story, 51st state and the Panama Canal. Why is there such a frantic effort to tar Iran with the brush of nuclear proliferation, when it's well known that in October of last year, all 15 US intelligence agencies concurred that Iran does not have a nuclear bomb and is not trying to make one, in spite of everything that Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu say. And we know that Iran has been inspected, fully inspected, to the satisfaction of the inspectors, as written in their reports, scores and scores and scores and scores of times by the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, not to mention other entities. And why do all of the experts, such as Scott Ritter, one of many, agree that Iran does not want a bomb, does not have a bomb, and is not trying to get a bomb? And in fact, there's a religious fatwa by the Ayatollah Khamenei that the government of Iran may not work on a bomb, may not have a bomb. It's because, and there's some related things too. South Africa comes into this picture, although it might make this video a bit long. the asylum/refugee status for Afrikaners is not as simple as it's being made out to be. And it's connected to this timeline, to this scenario. So there are these groups of people who believe that mankind is given 6,000 years, or this chapter, you and me, that there was some kind of a reset some few thousand years ago, 5,785 or before that. And then God tried again with us, and we will have 6,000 years to prove ourselves, after which there will be 1,000-year great reset, like a Sabbath day, and that we are presently in the year 5,785 of that calendar. They believe, these multiple groups, this is not a purely, I don't know, whatever name you want to give it thing, or give them. I'm sorry to have to tell you that you're simply wrong. Come and spend a week with me. They believe that we're in the year 5,785, which began in September of last year, and that it is an article of faith that the primary thing that every human being must believe is that there is a God. That can be expressed in multiple ways, but let's just keep it. And that not believing in God is the worst of all sins, worse than pedophilia, anything you like. And there is a proverb that goes, to not hasten the coming of the Messiah. So it's not an article of faith, it's not a dogma, but it is a proverb that is very instructive to you and me in trying to understand these things. To not hasten the coming of the Messiah is equal to the worst sin, which is not to believe in God, which illustrates to you the gravity of doing everything you can to ensure that the Messiah comes. The coming of the Messiah requires that certain things happen. The world must be in a very, very bad way. Morally, financially, all sorts of things, but they must all be in a very, very bad way to necessitate the coming of the Messiah to rescue the world from itself. Must be as wicked as Sodom and Gomorrah, or worse. That's a genuine comparison. Under those circumstances, the temple must be rebuilt, but it will be rebuilt with the Messiah. The Messiah will rebuild it, but the preparations must be made, as they have already been made. Those of you who follow these things will be aware that the choir has already been trained, that the songs have been written down, the vestments have been made already. The what would you call them? I don't want to be frivolous or flippant. I'd like to choose a word of adequate gravity, but I'm struggling. The silver salvers, the crockery and cutlery, as it were, that's the expression I didn't want to use. Crockery and cutlery, as it were, have already been produced. Everything else is, the team that will rebuild the temple has been in waiting in a compound that is raised from the earth, the building, since at least 1997, sometime prior to that, in fact. And that knowledge has been known. It was reported in Haaretz. I read it in Haaretz, the entire article in 1997, the enormous article on this, in Haaretz newspaper. Haaretz means the world. It's a left-wing Israeli Hebrew language newspaper. There must be 3 red heifers. There were 5 produced by genetic modification. 3 were, I beg your pardon, there must be 1 red heifer. 5 were made by GMO, if that's the correct word, but you know what I mean. They were genetically modified so that they would be red. 3 were found acceptable. 1 has been chosen for the purpose. It may or may not have already been sacrificed. The Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock have to be extirpated from the Temple Mount, and so on. And under those circumstances, there will be an enormous war where the West and the East, roughly speaking, will go to war. 35 proto-nations of the 70 nations described in the Bible on one team and 35 on the other. It's a bit opaque who those 35 are. people will tell you, oh, well, everybody knows that it's Edom and Ishmael. And others will say, well, we are the true Israel and we're not Edom, so that's an error. And then others will say, no, but the 35 of the nations are related to their Hamite people. So the fact remains that is their belief, that the 35 proto-nations who are described as the Edomites and the Ishmaelis, or the Ishmaelites, are the nations that must war against one another, 2 teams of 35 each. And that must happen in a year. There's a portion in the Bible that talks about, there are many sources, I've read them all, in which they believe it must happen in the year 5785, which is the year in the Jewish calendar that began last year in September. But I remind you, this is not a strictly Jewish thing. It simply is not. And in the portion of that year 5785 that overlaps with the Roman Catholic year, the Pope Gregory year of 2025, when those 2 years then overlap with the year of the Boomslang in the Chinese zodiac, the 29th of January was the new year for the year of the snake, when the element is wood. Wood snake, tree snake. The year of the tree snake, the year of the Boomslang. And that has very, very, very great significance to those people. The year, they believe that there will be a holiday, a great reset for 1,000 years. Mankind is, this version of mankind is given 6,000 years. We're in the year 5785, and that the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, describes the 28 epochs that will be given to mankind. A time to live, a time to die, a time to reap, a time to sow, a time to build up, a time to tear down, and so on and so forth. 26 of them are a time 2 or a time 4, a time 2. That's how it's usually translated. But the last 2 should be translated a time of war and a time of peace, meaning that they're ineluctable. If, let's say, in the time of tearing down, you opened a demolition company, it would be like swimming with the stream, the current of a river. Everything would go well with you. If you didn't, well, you didn't take advantage. You're tough luck. You're a fool. Likewise, if you became a crop farmer in the time for sowing, you would be doing yourself a big favor. And if you didn't, well, it's your tough luck. The opportunity was there. You didn't take it. But in the last 2 times, the time of peace and the time of war and the time of peace, the wording implies that they are ineluctable, meaning, and this is very, very, very important, that there will be nothing that you can do to take advantage or not take advantage. It will just be that time. Klar. You can say, I don't want to be involved in war. You're going to be involved in war. I want to be a peacenik. You remember the peaceniks of the people who didn't want nuclear arms in the 70s and 80s? They got the rude nickname peacenik, as if they were betraying the West. They were puppets of Russia, of the Soviet Union. Right. So where does that leave us? They believe if you take 5,785, you subtract that from 6,000, that we are in the last year of the second to last epoch, the time of war. And the time of peace is about to break out. How do we know that? Because if you divide 6,000 by 28, you get 214.24. And 6,000 minus 5,785 gives 215. So we're counting down to a time of peace, ineluctable peace, in which you will not be able to prosecute a war. So the final great war that brings the coming of the Messiah must be prosecuted now. In fact, I can give you a date. It's this week. But there's a caveat. Excuse me. There's a qualifier. Imagine you witnessed an explosion, and I was the expert, I was the demolition man or whatever, and you came to me and said, goodness me, I didn't see you press the button. This is you live here. You're blasting that mountainside for some reason. I might say to you, no, I did it 10 minutes ago. And you might look at me and think, what the hell is he talking about? I might say, oh, it's remote controlled, it's preset, we do it that way to give us the time to, it's on a timer, blah, blah, blah. The people in question who are controlling all of these events would say to you, if you went to them and said, oh, nuclear war didn't take place in that span of time, in that week, last week, Easter week, no nuclear war, what happened? They might say to you, and they would be right. I'm not on their team, but this is the way that they reason, and it's consistent, it's consequent, it's intellectually honest, if nothing else, even if it is wicked and Luciferian and satanic. It's not false in terms of the way that they look at everything. They may say, yes, but we bought the box of matches that lit the fuse that caused the explosion in that week. One way or the other, this is the great week for the incitement of the final war to end all wars that wipes out mankind before the time of peace of 214.24 years. There's a lot more to tell you, but let's keep this video digestible. It's already running to 19 minutes. And we'll talk more about it in days, weeks, months, and years to come. And hopefully that gives you an inkling as to what is going on in the White House and in Iran, which makes no sense at all. And the tariffs, if it's not obvious to you, prior to any war in history, every single leader has endeavored to insulate his economy from people who are neutral to him and people who are opposed to him, and sometimes even from his friends. And he tries to occupy those strategic pieces of land, such as Panama, Canada, and Greenland, that are most important to what is coming. Greenland for the North Atlantic sea route, Canada for access to Russia. If you have a look at a globe from the north, you'll see that Russia and the USA are very close to one another and not the 1,000 miles apart that are implied by Mercator projection two-dimensional maps. And Panama, of course, Panama Canal, transition point between East and West, most important, and perhaps one that will remain open. Certainly the Straits of Hormuz won't, for the oil, and the Red Sea, what is it called, the Suez Canal, certainly won't either. Which is why, going back many years, I began talking about the role that South Africa will play, and or one of the roles, and Mr. Miller has expanded on that at great length, and you would do well to listen to his videos on the subject. That's about it. I hope that this is helpful, and please be patient with me while I try to plead with the satellite people to forgive me and give me a service all over again. It's not going to be an easy one. Okie dokes, everybody. Goodbye. God bless.